the Altra Solstice XT3. So 3 things to like with this shoe. The reworked upper construction, I think, is a good thing for the shoe line. We now have a synthetic overlay that covers the entirety of the toe box, and throughout the midfoot here, we also have textile and synthetic overlays, and it just gives the shoe a better feeling on the foot. You feel a little bit more locked down when doing lateral stuff and any form of cross training, so it is a little bit better. Now, there is still a little bit of spillover because we do have a tiny bit of mesh up here on the forefoot on the lateral side, but comparatively to the XT2, this shoe is like 3, 4, 5 steps ahead of that one regarding the security that you're going to get with the shoe. Plus, if you crank down the midfoot in this model, you don't have as much spillover, which is prevalent in the XT2. So I do think that's a perk of this model as well. The second thing to like with this shoe is if you have a wider foot and a flatter foot, this can be a pretty good option to go with. So it does have a nice wide toe box. The taper isn't wicked aggressive. And because there's not a super aggressive arch in the shoe, it can work for a lot of different foot anatomies, especially for those folks who don't find that they fit into Adidas, Reeboks, etc. because they need a wider platform to train on. The third thing to like with this shoe is, once again, its performance is pretty well rounded. Like, this is a model that you can use for some strength training, some cross training, some HIIT, etc. and it will work across the board. I've also used these for interval runs and it's worked really well. So I have enjoyed the performance of this shoe. The medium density foam midsole gives you enough responsiveness to keep them relatively comfortable, but enough stability to train pretty heavy in. I have squatted over 300 in this shoe, deadlifted over 400, and it's been fine. Would I necessarily go max out in this model? No, but I think for most folks who want that wider shoe for doing a little bit of everything and they don't want to drop money on multiple shoes, this can be a good option to go with. But now let's talk about a few cons that I have with the Solstice XT3. All right, so 3 cons that I have with the shoe. Number 1, and I don't understand why they didn't fix this out of all the things in this model, the forefoot foam up here. So we once again have the same build that the XT2 had. A lot of folks had issues with this rubber peeling off. Literally on my pairs already, and I have not trained in them for that long, you're already having a little bit of splitting at the forefoot with this material. It's not that prevalent where it's causing hindrance of the performance of the shoe, but I also haven't used them that long and I haven't trained outdoors a ton in them. So that's kind of a bummer that they didn't fix the one issue that was consistently an issue with the durability of the XT2. If you do a lot of harsh cutting or you need a shoe for super aggressive sled work or you like to train outdoors, this is going to be a problem, in my opinion, for you. If you look at most of the reviews of the XT2, this is brought up on a lot of occasions. Now, not every single model had this issue, but I would be a fool not to mention it in this review, so definitely keep an eye on that. I don't love that. I'm already having a little bit of splitting here, and I am curious to see at what point this whole outsole piece is going to really start ripping off the shoe. The second con that I have with this model is the tongue. Why don't we have a gusset in this model? This tongue slides all the time, and it's super annoying. And honestly, if we just even had a low gusset or a loop here to help lock this tongue in, it would be way better. The fact that there's no loop here for security and there's no gusset, it's just one of those things where it's like, why can't we just have these couple of quality life updates so we don't have to keep adjusting the tongue when we're running, walking, wearing these to train? It makes no sense to me. So if tongue movement bothers you, this model is going to be your worst nightmare. The third con that I have with the shoe is for anybody with a narrow foot, steer clear of this shoe. I don't think you're gonna get enough upper security to lock your foot down, and with the wider toe box here and the more spacious upper, I'm not convinced you'll have enough security in this model, so definitely keep that in mind. You'll likely feel like you're sliding around in the toe box. Not necessarily an outright con against the shoe itself, but definitely a con in the context of different foot anatomies. To break down the performance of the Altra Solstice XT3, I'll discuss how the shoe does for lifting, cross-training, short runs, and daily wear. In the context of lifting, the shoe does a pretty good job. It's a really good generalist for strength work, and I think if you're training up to like 455 pounds and down, this model can work really great. It also does a decent job on machines with the grip of the outsole here and the rubber tread patterning, and again, this midsole will give you enough stability to train, relatively heavy and not feel super unstable. Plus, because we have a relatively lower stack height throughout with the shoe, it does feel a little bit more planted and grounded than other models. So if you plan to use this shoe for machine work, free weight work and whatnot, or if you're just an athlete that likes to sprinkle in some strength work and you want a wider model, this can be a great option to go with. You'll also appreciate the flexibility of the forefoot, in my opinion. When it comes to cross training, the shoe does a good job for the most part. The grip of the outsole is great and the upper security has been improved in the shoe. Now, it does feel a little bit swimmy at times, but I think if you fill out the shoe with the upper volume, volume, you will be plenty fine in this model. I also like how responsive this midsole is. Even though it is a little bit lower than other traditional hit shoes, you do get a nice level of pop with this model. For example, I've done a lot of jump rope workouts and kettlebell flow workouts in this shoe, and it's felt really good. I've enjoyed the pop of it. I've enjoyed the feel of getting up on the forefoot in it. And I think for most folks who are using this for classes or athletic workouts, you will enjoy the feel that you get with this shoe. My issues with this shoe for cross training are, number one, the tongue movement. It annoys me. If I'm doing lateral work, I don't like my tongue to move. And number two, this outsole durability is also worrisome because the XT2, same exact construction, had issues. When it comes to short runs, the shoe does a pretty good job. This is a pretty decent option for that person with the wide foot that wants that hybrid style training shoe. That can fare pretty well for a couple of miles. With this shoe, I have primarily used them for my interval runs and for my slow 10-minute pre and post workout runs, and they've remained relatively comfortable. Now I will say they are much more biased towards forefoot and midfoot striking because they have that zero drop construction and the heel's not super beveled or padded, so definitely keep that in mind. But if you want this shoe for short runs and you're that person that has the forefoot midfoot strike, you will enjoy this shoe. When it comes to daily wear, I've enjoyed this model as well. It is very comfortable and it's an easy shoe just to wear a little bit looser and slip on and wear out and about. But keep in mind, if you wear this shoe loose, that tongue is gonna move. And when it comes to daily wear, I'll just wear longer socks, specifically the TF2 socks. And when this moves, I don't really notice it as much. But when I wear my no-show socks, I do pick up on this tongue moving and you feel it more. So keep that in mind if you plan to rock these out and about. So when it comes to lifting, I'd give this shoe a 7.5, 8 out of 10. Good, but not necessarily the best training shoe on the market for lifting. For cross training, I'd give this shoe a 7 out of 10 due to the durability and tongue issues I have. When it comes to short runs, I'd give this shoe honestly an 8.5 out of 10. I've really enjoyed them for running and they have been pretty stellar for that, especially for faster paced runs on the forefoot. When it comes to daily wear, I'd give this shoe a 7.5 out of 10. Very comfortable, but that tongue movement is so dang annoying. When it comes to the price of the Altra Solstice XT3, you can expect to pay $130. I think if you want a flat shoe with a wide toe box and you primarily train indoors, you don't plan to use these outdoors a lot or for a lot of daily wear, the shoe's price makes a lot of sense. But if you do want a shoe that can be a little bit more resilient to durability, both outdoors and whatnot, you might want to look into models like the F-Fly from Innovate. That model also has a wider toe box and it's kind of that hybrid style training shoe. So now let's answer the question, who should buy the Altra Solstice XT3? Number one, if you like flat training shoes, this is one of the few models on the market that has a true 0mm heel to toe drop. Definitely worth looking into if you want a flat training shoe that's not a barefoot shoe and gives you a little bit of cushion with the midsole. The second context where I think this shoe makes a lot of sense is if you want that training shoe that's built a little bit wider that can do a little bit of everything, this can also be a really good option. Again, it does pretty well across the board for most activities, sans the few issues that are once again present in this model that were also present in the XT2, so it is a good all-arounder in my opinion. The third context where the shoe makes a lot of sense is if you have a high volume foot and so you have a thicker foot and you need a little bit more room with the upper in your toe box and throughout the midfoot, this can also be a good option. It doesn't feel as limiting with the midfoot as the XT2 did. It does have a bit more room and the upper I just think is a stronger material compared to the XT2. Now who shouldn't buy this shoe? Number one, narrow feet. I would say pass on this model. I don't think you'll get enough security with this shoe and there are just obviously better models out there like every other model almost that's made for like medium-ish feet and even more narrow feet, so a lot more options out there for you outside of this shoe. The second context where this shoe falls short in my opinion is for outdoor workouts or for workouts where you're really going to be digging into the forefoot doing like heavy sled work. That can cause this outsole to break down faster, so keep that in mind if that is you on a weekly basis with your workouts. The third context where the shoe falls short is if you're like me and you can be a little bit nitpicky with shoes, especially with things like tongue movement or the bottom of the midfoot kind of bunching up when you're lacing them, this would be one of those models that's likely going to irk you. This tongue movement, I'm telling you, it has happened in every session I've worn these and every time I've put these on, and if you can't look past it and get around that, that is going to seriously irk you with this model. When it comes to sizing and fit in the Altra Solstice XT3, I think true to size should be the safe call for most lifters and athletes. Now, again, if you have a narrow foot, you may want to pass on this model entirely, but if you have a medium width foot or a wider foot, you should be safe going true to size or go with the normal size that you go with in Nike, Adidas, or Altra models now, and most barefoot shoes too. The length runs, I think, pretty true compared to other models, and the width is definitely friendly enough for like I would say even a 2E, 3E foot width. All right, so when it comes to the weight, heel, toe drop, and insole in the Altra Solstice XT3, for my size 10 shoe here, we have a weight of 10.90 ounces. The heel toe drop of this shoe sits at 0mm, and this model does have a thin foam removable insole. All right, now let's break down the construction of the Altra Solstice XT3. Up here on the toe box and the forefoot, we now have this rubber slash TPU overlay that wraps around the entirety of the toe box and sits on the upper. This gives this toe a little bit more rigidity and security compared to the Altra Solstice XT2, so that is a change that I do like. It gives you a bit more protection and it protects that toe box a little bit more. Looking at the midfoot, you now have some textile and synthetic overlays that wrap around the lateral and medial side of this shoe, and then you have some Altra branding back there on the medial heel, and the heel itself has a padded mesh material to it. Looking at the midfoot, you have 6 core eyelets that go up with a 7th back there for lace lock. There is no tongue loop on this model. The tongue is a padded mesh, and again, it's not gusseted, which is a feature that I think the next iteration, please Altra, put into this shoe. We also have an external heel tab back here, and then the boot itself does have a little bit of a cup to it, but it's not wicked rigid. Looking at the outsole up here on the forefoot, we have an extended outsole layer that wraps up, and we have that same rubber tread patterning that runs throughout the entirety of the shoe that the Solstice XT2 had. We have the brakes up here in the forefoot for additional flexibility. Again, the brakes here at the base of the forefoot, these are the problem children of this shoe. This is what starts to split off on people. And we also have the split down here, but that's not really an issue for most folks. The rubber itself is very grippy, so I do like the outsole tread regarding grip, but again, you do have to kind of worry about the brakes in this shoe. And then looking at the midsole, we have this medium density foam. So again, a little bit of pop to it, but it does have a nice degree of stability too. And then once again, we do have that thin foam removable insole, but that pretty much wraps up the gist of the shoe's construction. If you have additional questions about this model, drop a comment down below. So now, would I buy this shoe again? Honestly, I keep going back and forth. I do like the improvements of the upper of this model, and I like that it fits that box of being that flat training shoe with a super non-aggressive midfoot and a wide toe box. But my issue is that it seems like Altra didn't really listen to a lot of the feedback that the XT2 had, and for that reason, I probably wouldn't buy this shoe again, just because with glaring issues like this outsole durability and not having that fixed after a lot of people complained about it, I'm just not that stoked about it, even though I do think the shoe fills a nice ask that a lot of folks have that a lot of other training shoes don't hit. So that said, it does perform pretty well in the gym, but there are little issues that give me pause with this model. If you have additional questions about the Solstice XT3, drop a comment down below or reach out to me personally, whichever you prefer. And as always, y'all, drop a like on the video, drop a subscribe to the channel. I will see you guys in the next one.